point it is a particular treat to have with us tonight, as we've had him for the last couple of days, one of my heroes and good friends, Art Buchwald. He's going to formally be introduced by Michael Parks, but I just want to say that when I think of Art, and I think of Art's involvement here at USC, I'm reminded that Art Buchwald was a member, famously, he might talk about this later, of a small club. The only other members of that club were the great lawyer Edward Bennett Williams and Ben Bradley. There's a wonderful story of one other person who tried to join the club, and maybe Art will tell that later. And it's a woman who, on her book tour of the United States, her only appearance in Los Angeles was here in this auditorium, in this school, and that was Art's good friend and mine, Katharine Graham. But so Art had this three-person club, pretty impressive, but I think that there probably was an even more impressive club of which Art Buchwald was a part and was more formative in his own experience, and that was the club of the Daily Trojan and USC. And Art, to have you back at USC and with your friends in the Daily Trojan and at the journalism school is a great treat. And tonight Art will be interviewed by one of America's great journalists, Pulitzer Prize winner, former editor-in-chief of the Los Angeles Times, and currently the interim director of the Annenberg School of Communications Journalism School, Michael Parks. Michael, Art, thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. This is a little bit of a fool's errand. If you didn't know who Art Buchwald is, why are you here? But let me give you just a few facts. He's a Depression-era kid. Left school and joined the Marines at 16. World War II. USC after the war. Paris on the GI Bill. Where was the GI Bill when we really needed it? Started a column for the Herald Tribune covering restaurants based on his experience as a food taster in the Marine Corps. Came back to the United States in 1962 when there was new hope in John Kennedy. That's when I first encountered him. He was speaking at a school paper where I was slaving away in the slot at $25 a shift, which was pretty good money. And he took the time to talk with the students and to talk with a humor columnist about the craft. And it was a lesson that stayed with me. So here he is, he's back in Washington. And you thought he's a humor columnist. He's not. Humor is a disguise. It's a disguise for social commentary. And that's what the Pulitzer Board recognized in 1982 when it awarded him the Pulitzer Prize for commentary. So, don't be fooled. Not funny. He wrote a book about 5 years ago, the title of which is just, is really sums it up. I'll always have Paris. What a statement to sum up a career. I'll always have Paris. It's dedicated to Anne McGarry, who was his wife for about 40 years. She's all the way through the book. But there are 30 books, which is not bad for an alumnus of the school. We claim him, who never graduated. USC did give him a doctorate, whereupon he told the students that they had kind of wasted their time. Yeah. Because there he was, Dr. Buchwald. I'm going to ask the first question, which is what I get to do. Then I think we'll probably,
Whatever.
yeah.
Okay.
So what does a humorist, a humor
Oh.
columnist, do in times like this?
It's tough. This is the toughest I've ever lived through since September 11th, because the areas that we always thought was funny, starting with the president, dealing with Congress, dealing with these stuffed shirt politicians, and dealing with all these institutions, they're off base now, not because you're not allowed to write that, but nobody's going to laugh. And anthrax, that's not funny either. So I have to select subjects that are funny and yet come in the side door, not the front door. So that is really, I find it very tough. Now, to give you a little credentials on myself, I'm 76 years writing, which is surprising, and I hope to continue her until he was 91. So I figure that's my goal. And I went to USC in 1945 to 1948. There was nothing in Buffalo as far as the eye could see. And everything. It looks like Donald Trump built the whole place. Anyway, I was doing fine here. I didn't have to work for a degree. I didn't have to do anything because they wouldn't let me have a degree because I didn't have a high school diploma. So I was in the student union and having coffee, and this stranger sat down at the table and he said, "Do you know you can go to Paris on the GI Bill?" And I said, "Count me in." So I decided to go to Paris on the GI Bill in 1948. And this was a glorious time. It was the golden time for Americans in Paris. And I got $75 a month from Uncle Sam. And at that time, it was enough to live on. The meals were about 50 cents and all that. So that period was so great. Then in 1949, I went down to the Herald Tribune and I said, "I'd like to do a column about food and reviews for the Herald Tribune." And the managing editor said, "We don't have such a column, and if we did, you wouldn't do it. Get the hell out of here." Now, some people would consider that rejection. But I decided to wait my turn. And then I heard he had gone back to the States. So I went in and I saw the editor. And I said, the managing editor and I have been talking about me doing a nightclub column. And he said, "That's a good idea." So I was hired by him, and then when the managing editor came back, he saw me there, sitting in a chair, and after about a month, we got to be friends. Anyhow, that was my life in Paris. I had my own column over there. It was put in syndication in 1952, and there is where I really I learned my whatever I had to learn to be a journalist. At the beginning, I was like Walter Winchell, like 3 dots, and that wasn't working. And then suddenly I let myself go free, fantasy, anything I wanted. I made myself a member of the international set. I made fun of them. And it was interesting because Thornton Wilder once said to me, "Archie," he called me Archie. He said, "Archie, those people need you more than you need them." He said, "Without you, they have no reason to exist. So don't worry about anything. They need you very badly." And that made me feel very good, Thornton Wilder saying that. And I have stories after story. I've written 30 books, of which I think 26 of them are collections of columns over the years, and 3 are Leaving Home, which is the story of my life. The second one is I'll Always Have Paris, and the third is a novel about Stella in Heaven, about a woman who dies. She goes to heaven, and she's running her husband's life from heaven.
Does it get better?
He doesn't know where the laundry is. He doesn't know where the thing. And the funny part of that is that she's got a search committee in heaven finding a new wife for him. But she isn't too serious about the job. Now, at this moment, I don't know where it's going. They're thinking of making a television series out of it. So that's nice, too. So I think I'll have a new book coming out in the summer. And it's interesting about the title, because before September 11th, it was all about the Clinton years, for all the Clinton years. And so I called it, I'll always, wait a minute, anyhow, I changed the title. And I changed the title for one reason, because people would misinterpret it. And so I based the title on this story, which I think is very poignant. And that is Mary McGrory said to Pat Moynihan when Kennedy was shot, Mary said, "I'll never laugh again." And Moynihan said, "Well, you'll laugh again, but we won't be young again." And that the title of the book now is We'll Laugh Again. And it's true today about this situation now. We've all grown up a little. We've gotten a little more about ourselves. We've gone inside ourselves. And it's bad, and nobody likes what we're going through. But I think it's a very maturing thing in terms of where we stand, where you people stand. The students here are starting to pay some attention to their lives outside of their own. You know, they were very much a me generation, I thought, and so were we probably. But now, you're different. You pay more attention to your family and your loved ones, and time becomes precious now. And at your age, the young ones here, it didn't mean anything, and now it means a lot, time. And one of the things I tell people to do when they say, what can we do? I say, keep a diary, because you are living in history of all times, some of the greatest history. So keep a diary. And don't write a lot. Just write one-liners so that you can remember, they can jog your memory. Otherwise, you won't keep it up. And that is the only thing I tell people. Go ahead.
Are you keeping a diary?
Huh?
Are you keeping a diary?
Yeah, sort of. And it is one-liners, and USC, and then, what things that happen out here. And I've found, since I accepted this job, that I accepted it before September 11th. That's when I said I'd come out as a writer in residence. And it was just another deal, it was another thing. And then when I came here, obviously, everything had changed, and my interest in coming out here is how do people take in it, and how do they feel about it. And so instead of giving a talk, we're all in group therapy right now. And we want to talk to each other, we want to boost each other's spirits, and whether they like it or not, people have to laugh. And my role in life, I decided, is to make people laugh but not feel guilty about it.
Okay. We have questions out here.
You can.
Oh,
Yeah. Oh, well, high school, the war started, World War II, and so the war was very exciting for me at 17 years old. And there was a funny thing, I'll tell you one funny story about Tom Brokaw put me in his book of The Greatest Generation. I like that. And there weren't too many Jewish guys in the Marine Corps, at least in my outfit. There were maybe one or two. So they became very patronizing to me. And they said, we had a family in Tulsa named Friedman, and they were very nice. They never cheated you. And I said, well, you see them, give them my best regards. And then, when I was writing my book, it occurred to me, I said, they weren't giving me a bad time because I was Jewish. They were giving me a bad time because I was an asshole.
So,
Yeah. My favorite what?
your favorite time in Washington. What has been your favorite time in Washington?
Every one of them have been different. I never dealt with the person as much as with the issue. Nixon, we all hated, so that was easy. And under Clinton, with all the stuff that he was pulling off, I was able to build a swimming pool behind my house. And, but I would say the outstanding ones, as far as you taking a picture in your mind when you were reading it, was Johnson and Nixon and Clinton. They were the top of the line. And John F. Kennedy, like all of us, we were very, very, we were young then, and his death affected us terribly. And then Bobby's death, then Martin Luther's death, and all those things went through the cycle of what we're all, nothing compared to what we're going through now. But we all suffered from it, mainly because of television. Television brought these things to us alive. And you know, before television, you knew about it, you read about it in the paper. Franklin Roosevelt died, so you read about it in the paper. And then when you saw the funeral of John F. Kennedy, it was a very, very moving event in which you were included in his funeral because of the fact that you were watching it on television. And I know a lot of you are too young for this one, but Lee Harvey Oswald, we were watching the funeral, and then suddenly they switched to Lee Harvey Oswald being brought out of jail, and the guy killing him, Jack Ruby. And that was sitting there in your living room, watching this on television. You didn't believe it could happen. And then we mourned for Bobby for a long time. He was out here that he got shot. We mourned for him. We mourned for Martin Luther King. And that is part of the communications problem that we have today, is that we see it and it affects us. I think it affects us, some more than others. Way back there.
When do you think we'll be able to laugh at the politicians again, as we did before September 11th?
I don't know, because right now everybody's being very patriotic. You don't even have two people fighting each other. There's a lot of stuff out there. The lobbyists are still doing their job, you know. And so I try to make fun of the lobbyists and sort of that stuff. But at the moment, you won't laugh at them, so I can't give it to you.
Okay, I think you got another question in the back there with the microphone.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you can define for us what is civic engagement. We understand that you understand politics and all the events that took place the last month, and I would like to know personally if you can define for me what is civic engagement.
What is civic engagement?
Huh?
What is civic engagement in the context of the events of the last month?
I don't know that, but I do know there's no getting away from it. Our liberties are being cut. And I'm writing a piece now about the power struggle in America. And what's happened was, with security, high school graduates are telling you where to go. Don't go in that door. You can go in that door. And they are going to be running our country for a while because they'll do it in the name of security. And some of it will be for real, and some of it will be to further what they're for anyhow. And I think of the right, Robertson and Jerry Falwell, their agenda hasn't been different, but now they're doing it in the name of patriotism. So you have to worry about that, people using this incident to get what they wanted anyway. I think this is also true of the layoffs in all the places, the cutting people off, and they do it now, you know, and they say it's patriotism, but they were going to do it before September 11th, and now they have an excuse to do it. So you have to be very careful about this in terms of treating them, and there are a lot of people that don't deserve respect. But you have to be, in order for a humorist to work with his audience, you have to be on the same wavelength. If you don't laugh at something I write, then it's not funny. And so therefore, the subjects that you do, people want to laugh, but it has to be on something that they feel safe about. And so this morning in the Times, I wrote about gas masks. And you didn't need gas masks for terrorism. You need gas masks for secondary smoking. And so that was a way that I was trying to satirize how panicky we are. And then you turn on television, one guy is saying, don't panic, everything will be all right. And then the next guy comes on and says, this week will be the big one. And we are in a stage now where we're actually trying to ferret out what we want to hear and what we don't want to hear, and how it upsets you if they're giving you a lot more than you want. I remember in the past there were only three networks. It was NBC, ABC, and CBS. Now you got Claybull, you got this, you got that. They're all covering the same story, and the one that they get the most play out of is the Arab news that they film in, I don't know.
Al Jazeera.
Yeah,
Al Jazeera.
yeah. So there you are.
Chuck?
Things are so bad. Do you have any optimism at all for the future?
You know, I have carry around a sign in my pocket which says, even if I knew the world would end tomorrow, I'd still plant my apple tree. And that was Martin Luther. He said that years ago. And that's all you can do. You can, if you have optimism in other things, you probably have some sort of optimism in this. If you're a downer, you'll be a real down here. And there's an interesting statistic that before September 11th, 1 out of 5 people had some form of depression. After September 11th, 7 out of 10 people had some form of depression. And 50% of the people that they interviewed at that time couldn't sleep at night. And 50% could not function the way they did before. So it's a blow. It's a shocking, I think a lot of us are still in shock. And I think after shock comes anger. And after anger, hopefully you reach some point. You know, you read about Israel where they're used to all this stuff, and that they claim we're going to get used to it too. But at the moment, we're just, I think, personally, they're scaring us too much. I mean, Ashcroft, I think, is a jerk.
Just
really
plain unqualified jerk.
Oh, yeah, he came, unqualified. And the reason for it is he gets on the air and says, we don't know where it's coming from, we don't know what it'll be, but we have information. Well, if they have information, why don't they give it to us? Oh. So if Los Angeles is the target, I'll move to San Diego. Yeah, way back there.
Assuming that you have an occasional day where you wake up and you just don't feel like being funny, what do you do to get yourself out of a rut?
If I find myself in a rut, it's never happened for one reason. They don't allow writer's block for newspaper people. You go into the editor and say, I can't write today, and he says, go write. And so I never had writer's block. Before the September 11th, I clipped a lot of articles about different things, ideas I had. And since then, it takes a long time, I'll tell you the truth, it takes a long time to write an article now because I have to be so careful. I have to do something that people don't accuse me of. You know, I don't care if, you know, if a lot of people think it's funny, that's okay. But I have to think about it. And that takes 2-3 hours and sometimes a day and a half to get it right.
I was wondering if you could talk to us about some of your more memorable experiences while you were in Paris. Maybe a little off the topic, but...
What was Paris like?
Oh! It was the best time of all. We, a lot of Americans were there on the GI Bill, and I tell a few stories. One is de Gaulle gave an opera for Khrushchev when he came to town, and I was invited with a white tie. And during the second half, I got a little bored, so I went outside on the second floor, and there's a big curtain there, and I opened the curtain, and there was 20,000 communists in the square, Postolopa Square, looking for Khrushchev. So I went out on the balcony. And I waved my hand, and 20,000 hands went up. And I did anything I wanted for 25 minutes. I had the balcony to myself. And the next day I called the embassy and I said, I can do anything the communists want me, I can do anything to the communists that I want. Well.
So, Kevin?
Yeah, I want to know, what are you most proud of in your career?
What are you most proud of in your career?
Well, longevity. I mean, he's still working, still be 56 is a nice thing, and that's the proudest of I am. And I had a stroke last year, and I managed to get better from the stroke completely, you know, so that was good. So those were all personal things. And I've had a good life. I've had Paris, I traveled all over the world. Everything about it is good. When you sum it up in a book, it's not a bad thing that I did. So I don't know if it's pride or not, but I'm here and I'm glad, and I'm not sorry about anything that happened. And people are very nice because if you can make them laugh, they're nice to you. Now, there's one thing that kind of gets me a little upset, I'll tell you, and that is when a gray-haired woman comes up to me and says, my mother loved you.
Down here?
Have you experienced any problems with being called unpatriotic, or have you just had any difficulties with trying to get a good response?
Well, you know, the country is a free country, and if I write against guns, which I do, gun lovers come in and say I'm you know, First Amendment and all that jazz. Then women's lib, you know, people mistake that. I'm really on the side of women's lib, but anytime you satirize anything about women's lib, certain people get very angry at it. So that's part of the thing is, you know, and if you don't get mail, you feel you haven't made it. You haven't done it. Mm.
Throughout your career, what have you observed about the role of media in fostering or destroying community, the concept of community?
Mm.
Do the media build or destroy communities?
What's happened now is we have so many more sources to go to. The internet is really coming on strong. The newspapers are not as strong as they used to be. And all these cable stations, CNN and CNBC and all of them are feeding us. So when you go through there, you can just go from one to another, and they're all trying to outdo each other, and a lot of times it's not real news, it's to hold your attention. So the media has been invented, I don't know who invented it as a matter of fact, but now I don't know if it's going to be larger than it is now, but it's a lot of things out there, and even without September 11th, they were on each other. Everybody was selling stuff, and the National Enquirer was doing its thing. I've always been surprised, too, that they would use anthrax on the National Enquirer. I mean, I wasn't as upset about that as some people thought.
Okay.
Yeah.
What inspires you to write?
What inspires me? I've been doing it all my life. It's a form of defense. When I had a checkered career. When I was born, my mother was put in an institution for 35 years. When I became 6 years old, I was put in an orphanage with my 3 sisters, and I was sent to foster homes in Queens, New York, about 3 or 4. Then, about 8 or 9, I said, this is ridiculous. I'm going to become a humorist. So I could get the kids to laugh in public school. I could get them to laugh in high school. I couldn't get them to laugh in the Marine Corps. And I've been doing it as a defense against all the things that have been tough in my life. And I did it all with a smile and humor and everything. I paid a price like everybody. I had 2 depressions, and one in '63 and one in '87. And since I came out of it, I've been speaking about it because people feel better if somebody like me had a depression. And Mike Wallace and I went on Larry King, and we had the biggest audience he ever had because there were so many people out there that had depression. But it didn't bother me, and when I got better, fortunately I came right back to where I was in terms of trying to be funny. So it was not the writing sponsors me, but my life has been created by this kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, how do you feel about censorship in the media since September 11th?
How do you feel about censorship in the news media since September 11th?
I don't think there's that much. In fact, we got too much. And as far as, for example, they tell us how many guys dropped on Kabul and how many, the Pentagon briefings, They're giving everything away. And I don't think you have to know that much. But then everyone says, but we got to know everything. Well, what do you do with everything? And here's another thing what makes it so crazy for all of us is that we're in a war. They admit we're in war. At the same time, they say, go out and spend money. And usually in a war, you stop spending money and you
Pay
serve the
taxes.
country.
Got to pay taxes.
Yeah. And the other thing, and you don't have it figured out except what you read in the papers, is they're giving tax cuts now to large corporations to make them bring the thing back, the economy back. So.
What newspapers do you read on a regular basis, and what?
Well, I don't read the Times because I don't get it in Washington, but I read the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and a lot of magazines.
In what sections do you go to first in a newspaper, and which sections do you discard?
Well,
not read
I
at
always
all?
go to my section first to make sure they printed me. And I don't think it's a fact until it's in the paper. Then I go to now the front pages, and then we have a section called Style, which is something like yours. And sometimes the sports, but not, ever since September 11th, I'm not that much interested in sports. And the Times, I find, is a very good source of material, and I thought they've done very well. The Wall Street Journal, you read because there's always one or two stories in there that's helpful. So I would say I read 3 newspapers and Time, Newsweek, and whatever thing is out there. And it's all in the back of my head. I don't use it tomorrow or the next day, but it's somewhere out there.
If you could pull back one column and say, I wish I had never printed that. What would
I
it
never
be?
printed it?
I never wrote it. If you could pull one of them back and said, oops, I shouldn't have done that one.
Oh, yeah, I have a good one. I was on Martha's Vineyard sometime in the 70s, and there was a meat shortage. And I wrote about going to these people's house for dinner, and every time I went there, there's one child missing. It was too late to bring back. Yeah. Oh, I have 2 columns a week, but I like to get ahead if I get the idea. But the gas mask came out of an article that a woman on the Washington Post ran, saying she'd gone out, and she's serious, she'd gone out and bought a gas mask, and she was all panicky about everything. So I decided to satirize her. And then I also did the same article, which was kind of fun. I said that, does Viagra do the same thing for you as Cipron? And they said the studies haven't come in yet.
I want to know what happened to the humor in the last presidential election. It seemed pretty humorless, until afterwards, of course.
What was that?
What happened to humor in the last presidential election? It seemed devoid till the end.
It was like all elections. It was like all the different ones. People argued and fought and everything. But it wasn't, nothing serious. I saw a thing on the Today Show where this guy wrote a book, Jeffrey Tobin, about how Bush stole the election from... Now, the other question, which is kind of interesting, is who thinks, I'll just test you now, who thinks Gore would have made a better president now than Bush? Huh. Who thinks that Bush would make a better president? About even. Yeah. That's interesting. Because a lot of my liberal friends and my Democratic friends don't want Gore. They said, we'll take Bush. And apparently Gore, with a lot of people, doesn't have what it takes as far as running a war like that. And, you know, huh?
Okay. Carrie?
What do you think has been the least covered issue or story in all of your years writing columns? Is there something, either domestically or international issue, that has not been picked up that you think should have been picked up?
What's international or domestic story has been missed? What has been the least covered?
Well, this area that we're now every day has 7 or 8 pages on never got in the paper before September 11th. We didn't know there was an Afghanistan. The kids didn't know. We didn't know. We didn't know anything about the Muslim world we were suddenly finding out about. And I think it wasn't well covered. And it only became more covered after September 11th. Do you agree?
Yes and no. I was there 22 times in 20 years.
Where? In the Muslim countries?
Afghanistan.
Yeah. And so do you think that we covered it well?
When I was doing it, yes. You got one over here, Art.
You mentioned that the newspapers are not as good as they used to be. Can you expand on that?
Why newspapers aren't as good as they used to be?
Aside from not running a column.
No, the thing about it is that newspapers was our main source of news for a long time. You went to bed at night, you woke up in the morning, and you had the news. It was all fresh. Now, when you get up in the morning, you've already seen it on the 10 and 11 o'clock news, so it's not that fresh. Secondly, newspapers are tremendously hurt by the lack of advertising because they can't give as much as they'd like to you if they don't get the advertising go with it. And advertising is really the thing that keeps the media going, and it always has. And I don't know now if you can put out a newspaper without as much advertising as you had in the past. But the main stores that we have now, the stores aren't advertising much. We talked last night about what was the most important thing in the paper, and everybody guessed wrong. I finally said the help wanted ads, because you had to have the help wanted ads. You don't need the rest of the paper.
Art, there are a lot of still brassiere ads in the paper. God, I don't know what the papers would do without the brassiere ads. But I like you, I'm about your age, a little younger, but I spent 45 years at the LA Times as a writer. I think that there isn't another thing a person can do in life and have as good a time as we have, and all the experiences and the people we meet. There's not another job like it. Yeah. And I can't see why, young people wouldn't want to get into this business.
But the thing, to add to that, is people in the print media who want to go into it or think about it have to pay their dues. Have to work for AP, UP, Reuters. It takes time to become a professional writer of television. They pay you a lot of money at the beginning, and there's no really paying your dues. And public relations is now hiring everybody away that's any good. And that's I don't think that's fun if I was 45 years in public relations. And I find in my class, I didn't graduate, 48, the guys that went out of my class into public relations later on regretted the fact that they wasn't in newspaper, they weren't writing. And people went into public relations, they went into advertising, and then not so much in television because it wasn't that big then. But it's a thing in which those of us who are in it and have enjoyed it, that's great.
You've got one down in front.
Yeah. A lot of people turn to you for a quick laugh, so where do you go for a quick laugh?
Where do you go for a quick laugh?
Laugh?
Yeah, where do you turn?
Oh, me?
Who makes you laugh?
Oh, me. The world. The world makes me laugh. Things are going on that's so crazy that I don't have to look hard. We're bombing with one hand and dropping food with the other. We're not supposed to hit a Red Cross hospital. We're supposed to do this. And so all those things, the ridiculousness of September 11th is there. They've raised millions of dollars for these people, billions, I guess, and they don't know how to give it away. And the bureaucracy has come in and really changed everything. So I think that what makes me laugh is just everything.
Do you think our responses to September 11th could be part of a hidden agenda?
A hidden agenda?
Yes.
That we're doing something we don't know about?
The anti-terrorism bill, does that seem like Big Brother? Does it seem Orwellian?
Yeah. And they can get away with it. We're in a very dangerous period in terms of security versus freedom. And I'm writing an article now about the power struggle in America now between a guy who has a high school diploma or less, who's telling you and everybody, go into that door. You can't go into that door. And he is in charge of us, all these people that are in security. And they're not that bright, but we all have to do it. And talk about class warfare, the average guy having power now over these people is a wild thing. Yeah.
What does it take to make a successful president?
The Times have something to do with it. Ronald Reagan got away with a lot. And, you know, he wasn't a great president. He was a successful president, and he had luck on his side. Carter didn't have luck on his side, and that's why he lost. And so a successful president is somebody that things are going well for. This is not true of Bush. He came into it and could have got away with a lot, particularly just going to the right and helping the right. And now he's become Abraham Lincoln, you know, President of the United States, Bush. And they play God Bless America, and everybody goes home happy.
We have a...
Right here?
Right.
Okay. I just wanted to ask you a question about the Depression. I know Thomas Jefferson was subject to depression during his life, so I guess with all due modesty, how much of it is the fact that you're an intelligent person?
Depression. Thomas Jefferson suffered from depression.
Yeah.
Is this something that befalls an intelligent person?
Sometimes, you know, a lot of intelligent people have depression.
Is it Winston
Churchill had depression.
Is it a result of being intelligent?
No. Some of it is chemical, and something happens to you, and some is in the family, and some of it is a situation that suddenly happens to you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, what we're going through now. Everybody handles it differently, and it depends on where you're coming from in the first place. Now, you can have a depression that hospitalizes you. You can have a depression that, you know, even, this is a funny thing, but even in depression, there's humor. I did the Larry King show, and 2 weeks later, I was in a taxi cab, and the taxi driver said to me, do you take Prozac? And I said, no. He said, well, my dog does. I said, how's he doing? He's doing much better. So here was the humorous thing. I preach, number one, which is true, you get over depression. It's one of the illnesses you get over. Secondly, in my case, and I think it's true of many cases, you're a better person than you were before because a lot of the things your back, that are on your back, you get rid of. Thirdly is that people, there's one thing about it which is very, very tough, and I work on this because it is tough, and that is the stigma involved with depression. Mental illness is something not like you broke your leg, you broke your arm, you had a kidney problem. Mental illness puts up a light. And as soon as it goes in your health record, you don't get a job if you're with Ford or General Motors, somebody. And so we all, like Mike Wallace and myself and Bill Styron, try to work some way on taking the stigma out of it. Now what's interesting is that we were on a panel, a whole bunch of celebrities, about stigma. And I said, I don't think a celebrity has to suffer that much from stigma. And everyone sort of agreed a little, except Rod Steiger, who said, I had a depression and it went in my record, and for 5 years I couldn't get insured for a movie. So the insurance company will do you in if you had a depression. I mean, that's part of life now. Yeah, now I use the computer, but all those years I used a typewriter.
And how about you? You have so many words per day.
Yeah.
Have they ever been an editor that kept out his volume on the top of you? Or you call them out the feeling?
Not the papers that I read. Someone out there, some editor, dumb editor, of course, is doing it. But I'd be crazy if I read all the...
I read Meg Greenfield's book that she wrote secretly the last 10 years of her life, where she categorized politicians as really totally fakes now, because every single thing is covered by the media. They can't say anything to an aide, like he's a jerk, or they can't say anything here. It goes right, it's reported. What is your take on politicians today, and can you trust anything that they say?
Well, here's an interesting thing, particularly with television, is that there are certain politicians, like Teddy Kennedy, like the ones you see on Meet the Press and all those, and when something happens, they go to them. They go to them with their cameras, and the other politicians don't get any, recognition. So you have to be careful about people fighting for getting on television. And they're all sound bites. I told Jeff that you ought to have a soundbite class here in the journalism department, because we're all talking in sound bites. No one completes a sentence. They go 1 minute, 2 minutes, and and so what happens is, if you're a reporter for television, you stand in front of the Supreme Court all day long for 2 minutes on the evening news, and that's the day. And I think that's a terrible way to spend your time.
Art, this has been a magnificent evening, and I want to leave people wanting you to come back. How many of you want Art Buchwald to come back again next year? Let's make this an annual event. We'll have the annual Art Buchwald lectureship given by Art Buchwald. One of the things that we always do is we have a reception afterward, and one reason why I want to break now